Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board meeting. Just if anyone plans to give a public comment, if you could please come up here and grab a form and fill out that form before you speak.
All right, we can call this meeting to order. It is 10:30. Welcome everybody to be here. We will start with roll call.
So I'll call people off, actually. I've done this too often. Chair Klein.
Here.
Vice Chair Robertson. Taylor Adams. Kara Harris.
Here.
Online. Mr. Kinney.
Here.
Nettie Oliveri.
Here.
Michael Powney.
Here.
Kurt Stitzer.
Here.
Mike Van Houten. Here. All right. Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum of the Redevelopment Agency Advisory Board.
Outstanding. We'll observe member Adams present and he arrives. Let's move into public comment. Any public comment?
Mr. Chair, if I can chime in, just one thing from procedural administrative functioning. We are required by open meeting law to note that this notice has been posted. Additionally, members of the public are available to join online using the following link, https://linktr.rev/RAAB042125 if they wish to participate. So note online, and sorry, you can continue back to your public comment portion for general public comment.
Very good. We will invite Mr. Schwab up to give public comment. Invite him now. And then we'll go to folks online.
And then is there also public comment on the
You may
specific?
have an opportunity during agenda item.
Okay.
Would you please say for that opportunity or speak?
You know, I'll give an initial broad stroke. I am here. My name is Stephen Esquaga, with the Peppermill, part of the coalition that is giving communication. I just want to go on the record, to address item C2. And before really I start with our concerns, I do just want to make clear again, Peppermill is in fully support of the arena as well as the members of the coalition. It's just where we diverge with the opinion of the use of TIF financing for the project. This whole process has been pretty interesting. I think I want to thank you as members of this group to accept that responsibility to come in. But at the end of the day, I hope that we can walk away with really three main points before you address the agenda item itself. We've talked about blight a number of times. I know Mr. McCardle has somewhat moved through both with the city and this group of saying, well, if it's in a redevelopment district, it qualifies as blight because it is in that redevelopment district. I don't think that's accurate in this case. I think if any of us went to the Grand Sierra, you have to applaud what they've done as a business. Sitting on 150 acres, beautiful landscaping, beautiful lighting package, $1 million in signage on the building, very welcoming to guests, and a wonderful, one of our assets in the whole tourism field, but it is not blight. I think we could walk the neighborhoods together and we probably agree 99% of the time on blight and the definition. There is an NRS criteria, and I hope that you will be walked through and checked through those boxes. The but-for test has been similarly very opaque and very hard to pin down. As we know, Ms. Morello or representatives of the company have stated that they do plan, they are able to fund the project on their own. I think when you look at the Hunden report and you start getting into the, is it feasible going forward? It may not meet the reasonable return on investment for Mr. Morello, but we feel still that what that will generate, gaming, restaurant, future capacity in the rooms, it will benefit the GSR. There will be benefit to the greater area as well, but the majority of it is predominantly for the GSR. The last point while I'm talking about public benefit is where is the public benefit for the project? Outside of the GSR, how does the use of public tax dollars benefit Reno residents? Is it the 8-story garage? there aren't ancillary businesses really. It's there for the arena. It's there for the days of non-events for the GSR guests. But it isn't like it's in an urban core here where it's gonna service many outlets. The aqua golf, well, I think it's a great idea. Is that really a public benefit to be putting tax dollars to? Even the Wolfpack Athletic offering, I think it's great. It's home for the men's basketball. It's not a free home. It's actually, there will be a lease. I'm wrapping up right here. But for 17 games over 10 years at 70, 80 million, I don't know if that really is a benefit to the public. We need to distinguish much clearer between the benefit to the citizens of Reno and the citizens of and the business of the GSR. So I'm sorry, I kind of came in fast and trying to meet the 3 minutes, but I just want to make those points and I'll be available to speak for if the time of the agenda.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone online that would wish to provide public comment? You could raise your hand. Okay, so we've got 2 folks. Let's start with Art Rangel. Mr. Rangel. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Okay, thank you, Art Rangel. Just something we should all keep in mind is that redevelopment is not just about eliminating blight or lack of proper utilization of some parts of the project area. And by the way, not all properties within the redevelopment area have to be blighted to qualify to be within the redevelopment project area, as long as other properties in proximity are blighted. Redevelopment is also about building a vibrant community within with new tax generating uses, specifically property tax and consolidated tax, that will last well beyond the end of life of the redevelopment project area. The smart use of redevelopment and TIF as a private public financing tool has been used by forward-thinking redevelopment agencies around the country for many decades. When used properly, the but-for test is a great economic development resource, specifically in Nevada, which has very few public financing and revenue generating tools. The key is to use TIF for the right land use in the right location. I look forward to hearing what this board does with the GSR request, as well as the commercial road request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Wells, Dave Wells, you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Dave Wells. I wrote the other report that's now in your packet. I just wanted to comment on, I got to review the Hunden rate of return analysis. I just wanted to point out something. Obviously they've increased the cost of the arena by some 20+%, which is a bit disconcerting that they would do that in the middle of the process. But the rest of the argument actually doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So according to Hunden, the new internal rate of return is 3%, and the benchmark that they're looking for is 4.5. Receiving the TIF won't get them to 4.5. It'll get them to something like 3.3 or something like that. And so if it's not economically feasible at unless it's at 4.5, it's still not economically feasible. Yet the implication is that Merlot's groups is going to build it anyway, which suggests that, to me anyway, that the TIF isn't actually why they want to have that they don't need the TIF to build this thing. They're really not that concerned about those numbers that are on there. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that concern that sort of jumped out at me in terms of the way in which it was being put forward. And I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has.
Very good, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to give public comment? Okay, we'll close the public comment session and move on to approval of the agenda. Members, if you just quick review, we have a couple of business items and of course some TIF reviews, and then we move into announcements. We do know that Member Adams will be here around 11, so we'd like to have optimal full board presence around that time when we get to specific tax income and financing items. Any other issues with the agenda? I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by member Kinney,
Nettie Oliverio, I second.
second by member Olivera. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Agenda's approved. A4, approval of the minutes. We've got 2 meetings under our belts here with minutes, February 21st and the March 3rd minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
Mr. Chair, I had a couple comments and then I'll make a motion.
Okay.
On the February 21st minutes, the first paragraph under item C3, that discussion actually took place under item C2. So I think it should be moved there. And the first thing that happened under item C3 was I made a disclosure of the record of my wife's employment and my sister's employment. And then Mr. Adams made some disclosures as well, as I think the minutes should reflect those. With those edits, I'd be willing to approve both the February 21st and March 3rd minutes.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to also just note, it's in page 18 of the packet document. But, it's the notes under B1 discussion. I had made a comment about location next to Vine Street. Verified it. I'm not asking that it's on the Vine Street portion of the parcel, but that analysis of access and entry from Vine Street to the parcel.
Okay, noted. Are there any other changes to minutes? Member Pond, I'd ask you to rescind your motion and revise.
I'll amend it. I'll move to approve all the edits, including those of Mr. Robertson.
Very good. Do I have a second? Second? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Minutes approved. Council liaison report. Move through that over to A6 for staff liaison report.
I just have some, Brian McCarroll for the record, I just have some brief updates. Although these are not redevelopment projects, I just want to give some updates on some of the construction happening throughout downtown related to ARPA funding. This is, the funds for these projects were received through ARPA, but our office was tremendously involved in getting them designed, greenlit, and starting the construction process. So you will see in West Street Plaza, there are some temporary placemaking improvements being installed right now. There's a mural along the river, as well as some aesthetic seating. They look like river rocks, as well as shade umbrellas and temporary seating. And the press conference ribbon cutting for that will be May 2nd, if anyone would like to join. Also along the river, you might have seen new trash cans that are placed along the river. That was part of that project. New wayfinding signs will be going in the next 3 months along the river, and painting of the railings. We're getting rid of all the maroon down there, and some new lighting fixtures are going in as well. Locomotion Plaza is going under construction here. That will be open Memorial Day weekend, give or take about a week. And the river east from the museum, Auto Museum, all the way to Broadhead Park is currently at 30% design. So we'll be seeing the conditions report as well as the design there. So those are some projects that are currently going. As they get into future stages, it's likely redevelopment will be supporting those construction activities. But between now and Memorial Day weekend, you'll see a lot of placemaking projects being installed throughout the downtown core. So just something I wanted to update everyone on. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Any questions or comments for staff? Great. Let's move into our business items. V1 presentation and possible recommendation for adoption of the Redevelopment Agency Board for the fiscal year 26 Redevelopment Agency operating plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian McCardle again for the record. In the past, the city has summarized the redevelopment funds in essentially 4 different buckets. There's a general fund and a debt fund for both RDA 1 and RDA 2. What we are doing now is combining those to essentially an operating plan. It won't be called an operating budget due to the fact that we report the actual plan to the state based on those specific funds. And so what you have before you is essentially an operating plan that blends all those together into one operating budget in a way. The ad valorem revenue that the RDA agency itself will receive within the next fiscal year is about $15 million. We do have some debt still to pay off. RDA one has the majority of the debt. That will likely be paid off next year. You'll notice RDA one doesn't have that much increment coming into it, and the debt service takes up most of that. And so RDA one still has limited resources to do a lot of projects, but RDA two is practically debt-free. There's a small $50,000 payment connected to the Cabela's project, but the majority of the funds are generated and usable for the RDA two area. We've taken about 20% of the funding mechanism and put those towards operating expenses for the general agency. Everything left after that is mainly capital improvement projects. And so on the second page, or the third page, I should say, we have outlined some potential capital improvement projects for redevelopment area one and redevelopment area two. The primary one is continuing with the restore facade and tenant improvement program through both areas. We'd split those 50-50 so that we can do another $1 million in restore facade improvements and tenant improvements like we did last year, but it'll be split between RDA one and RDA two. A couple other things noted in here, but a small walls program with the arts and culture department that is small tactical murals throughout that town and possibly some iconic murals throughout RDA one and RDA two. And then on RDA two, the next biggest item is potential property acquisitions by the redevelopment agency, which is the next agenda item. And that is the operating plan. I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes.
Did we use all of the restore funds?
There are, I would say, Brian McCarter for the record, I would say there's 3 or 4 projects that we've given extensions to that are finishing up now. But due to the ARPA funds, they had to be committed, contract signed, and encumbered against those projects by December of 2024. And so those projects are the projects that we're waiting on. But the funds have been allocated, they cannot be moved around. Those projects are the ones that we're watching.
Mike Van Houten for the record. I have a couple of questions on the professional services. What's a vibe map? That sounds pretty cool.
Yep, I will, I'll turn it over to JP Wertz. He can probably better, our marketing manager, to explain what Vibe Maps is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vibe Maps is essentially a scrubber of the internet looking for events in a particular area, and we can set filters to only capture specific events and exclude other events that might not necessarily meet the bill. And the idea is to collect all of those in one place so everyone knows what's going on, where it's happening, and some of the details of those events in one centralized location.
Okay, cool. And then some of the plans on here, are those in the works? Are those like the future for fiscal year 26, like the retail attraction campaign and the river service plan?
Brian McCarter for the record, those are plans and projects that we will undertake this fiscal year.
Okay, cool. So I'm sure we'll hear about them as they
Correct. No RFPs have been written or anything like that. We're just recommending funds now so we can
awesome.
address those. But these are sort of our goals and our projects for this upcoming fiscal year.
Awesome.
Brian, can you just, who are the salaries and wages and benefits for, who are the entities?
Yep. Brian McCardle for the record again. So we have 8 individuals under the redevelopment agency. That's Maureen, Wes Cuthbert, property analyst, JP Wertz, program marketing manager. We have, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. We have me, part of assistant city manager, Ashley Turney. We have a code enforcement officer that it supplements for the downtown area, as well as a historic analyst in the arts and culture division that helps with all the historic stuff. And then we have 2 open positions right now for a project manager that will help with all of our capital improvement projects and a management assistant to help the agency as a whole. So that includes 2 positions that are currently have open positions. So we're hiring for those right now. And in this new fiscal year, we also have 2 additional positions earmarked that we will fulfill throughout the next year. So in total, that's about 10 people.
Just as a follow-up on the 5 maps, that's location based. It's like a location based app for understanding where coming from and why where they're spending time.
So no, I think what JP Wertz, marketing manager for the record. I believe what you're referring to is Placer. That's how we get our location information. Vibe Maps is really more of kind of a centralized location for visitors and constituents to visit on the internet to find out what all the events and all of the activations are, regardless of who the promoter is, whether it's the Row, whether it's us, whether it's Midtown. They'll be able to go there and see everything that's happening.
So Nettie Oliveria for the record, so following up on that, will that then be on the Reno.gov website as a additional page, or will it have its own home?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea for that is for it to have its own home on the RDA's website, and we'll be able to point to that when we communicate about all of our events and activations.
So the new website?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jake, on the retail attraction. Can you explain that?
Yeah, Brian McCardle again for the record. We have noticed that there's a systemic problem with the retail of the downtown area. Either it is between property owners not being very proactive in listing their properties. Most of the properties that are vacant don't even have for lease, for sale. And we've seen some hesitancy with the downtown or with retail brokers to take on some of these projects. They're mostly chasing the In-N-Outs and Paneras of the world. And so looking at some other cities that have similar problems to reactivating their main street, there are a few companies out there. One of those is like Retail Strategies that will come in, do an assessment, help you identify and help you create a attraction campaign and actually go out and identify some tenant reps. You know, we could go straight to Chipotle and invite them to look at some specific sites downtown. It sort of puts us not in the broker role, but it definitely starts the conversation to say, you know, you should be looking in this area. Please come look at these specific sites. If there is interest, they would normally go through the same retail broker process. We're not taking any commissions or fees or anything, but this is substantial enough that we feel we need to dedicate time and attention towards. DRP is, the Downtown Marine Partnership is aware of this as well. They're going to be a partner on this, but it's something we have to be proactive and address.
Mike Van Houten for the record, is the 4th Street revitalization plan East 4th or West 4th or both?
It will likely be East 4th Street.
Okay.
Mainly from Evans Avenue all the way along East 4th Street and then incorporate some of the river as well. There's a large enough swath over there that is that needs some direction. There's some items addressed in that 2007 retract plan that are pretty good. That plan is nearly 20 years old, so hopefully it'll take some of that and help us sort of reimagine the future of East 4th Street, as well as incorporating some of the historic components as well.
Okay.
Because there is a historic district recommendation happening for East 4th Street. And so with both these two things, they'll reinforce each other.
Awesome.
Michael Pine, what are the event barricades?
Yep. Brian McCardle for the record, given some of the challenges after the New Orleans car going into driving around the current barricades, Reno Police and some risk management and safety has asked that we need to change the way we do barricades around special events and street closures. So they work. Bollards would be a normal one. We've heard that bollards now are a safety risk because cars hit them and could possibly flip over. And so there's a new product out there that's sort of these geometric cubes that you put in there and it stops cars or pushes them sideways. I believe the city of Sparks is purchasing some. And so it was recommended that if we want to do more events in the downtown, it'd be great to have these.
So these are
product.
at least this is a purchase if the city has or agency has it.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? I'll check with member Kara Harris online. Do you have anything, Kara?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, very good. Seeing no more testimony or comment. I'll seek a motion to approve the operating plan. Motion by member Kinney,
And Nettie Oliveria, second.
second by member Olvera. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Plan is approved. Okay, let's start on B2. And then we'll see where we get.
I just have two slides that I'll bring up. It was a few months ago, the city of Reno asked myself to look through all the underutilized parcels that the city of Reno currently owns. And we went through over 50 parcels and identified some that could either be sold off, could be repurposed. And there are a few along the 4th Street corridor that were jointly deeded to both the redevelopment agency and the city of Reno during the retract project. Rather than sell those off to any bidder or through a public process or to the current businesses that operate on the sites. And because we want to do a 4th Street plan for that area, it was recommended that the city transfer those properties to the redevelopment agency so that we can sort of dictate what the future looks like. We can hold on to those until we know what the plan is and maybe even sell those off for a redevelopment purpose or to the operators on those sites in conformance with that plan. And so those sites do have value. And so it was recommended that we transfer those from the city of Reno to the redevelopment agency, and the redevelopment agency purchase those sites from the city. Back of the napkin math has those at about $4.5 million, but we will go and appraise each one of those sites for the fair market value. We get 2 appraisals on each site. We we average them out, and that is the fair market value. And so we will likely do those in concert if it's approved here today. Get the appraisals, get the values, come back and either do one transaction or do them in piecemeal. Yes.
And Nettie Oliveria for the record. So Brian, who actually does those appraisals? Is it an appraiser within City of Reno or an outside contract?
Yeah, Brian McCardle again. We usually rotate between the appraisals. I actually think it's in NRSM code that says that you should be rotating appraisers. So we just go out and identify commercial appraisers. Yeah, they come in. There are few appraisers in town, but we do rotate through the 3 or 4 for most of the properties we have.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mike Van Houten for the record, for the properties where the operator might not be interested in purchasing it, because I know there's a couple where they want to purchase it because it's adjacent or whatever. Once you acquire those, would you be able to offer them to developers at a lower rate than market rate? Because I know land cost is one of the biggest impediments for developers starting projects downtown.
Yep. Brian McCardle for the record. The redevelopment agency and the city of Reno does have the ability to sell property for less than fair market value if it is for redevelopment or economic development activity, and it's for the betterment or public benefit of the community. So yes, in the future, if a site does go up, somebody wants to propose a development on a site, it could in theory reduce the cost to make the project pencil. Let's say they don't want a TIF application, but they would like to purchase the land for less than fair market value to make the project work. That could be considered.
Kurt Spitzer for the record, is that through an RFP process or how would
we have not determined that yet. I think the process will be to go out to the existing, there are operators on these sites to go out and say, do you have plans to do improvements to your property, expansion, something like that? Because we want to see redevelopment occur on those sites. And if they do, and we can develop a plan, we could sell and transfer the properties back to them, expecting that they make those improvements. If some of these sites are underutilized or vacant at the moment, we could do an RFP where people propose specific developments on that site. And it could be a mix of housing, mixed use, commercial retail, whatever, but it could be decided what type of project and at what price through that RFP process.
And so all 10 or 12 of these parcels, and forgive me, I haven't gone and driven them all, but they're all occupied right now.
Most of them are. I believe Martin Harris is some of those on the left. Reno, RHP does own some of those along Sutro. The 2 on the far right along Sage Street, Those are currently underutilized. One is an evidence barn that Reno Police Department uses to store evidence cars. And the other one, diagonal, is just a vacant dirt piece of property at the moment. Our courtyard and maintenance and operations is using that just for some storage.
If I could also weigh in to your previous question, Ashley Kearney, Assistant City Manager for the record. We currently have a policy on file as it relates to the city of Reno side of property distribution and RFP direction of the council. However, to Brian's point, the RDA agency has not set a specific policy for that. So that will be something that we'll be bringing back forward to that board for their formal direction on how they'd like to receive these. We've proposed having an annual property plan that the council the RDA approves as part of their budget process to identify if there are parcels that they would be interested in selling or just maintaining. So then we're not in a space of constantly having to float LOIs coming to this board and the RDA. So we'll be bringing that forward to the RDA board in the future for their direction.
Is there, if the properties, the parcels were jointly deeded to the city and to the RDA, then are we essentially acquiring half of the properties?
For Brian McCardle, for the record, no, we would ask the city of Reno to quit claim their interest with a monetary transaction.
I guess to Michael Tyne for the record, to his point, will the appraisal reflect that it's a kind of common interest that it's valuing, or are they going to value it as a fee interest?
That is a great question. We will bring those back, yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a point of clarification, at the bottom of this exhibit, it says 12 parcels, but there's actually 10, John. Is that just an oversight or?
That might be an
12
oversight.
Parcels and now there's 10?
And it should only be 10. Great point.
So we'll correct that for the record, that it's 10 parcels for sale. And again, just for clarity, this is purchase by the RDA. This is not intent to put these properties up for sale for anyone else at this time.
Understood. Okay, I'll ask for any public comment or any comments online if there's anything regarding this item. Please raise your hand if you have some comments to give. Okay, seeing none. Let's, I'm looking for a motion to recommend that the redevelopment agency board authorize staff to initiate the appraisal process for the 10 city-owned parcels within redevelopment area 2 as identified in the city of Reno's approved property disposition plan.
Michael Tyne, you so moved.
Moved by member Ponder. Do I have a second? Second by member Kinney. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Unanimously approved. Thanks, Steve. Item C, tax increment financing applications review. We'll start with C1. The consideration and recommendation of a tax increment financing application from E Commercial Row LLC for the Commercial Row residential development of 175 for-sale townhomes, streetscapes, and public improvements.
Excellent. Brian McCardle for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have received another TIF application for this property. It is located within redevelopment area 2. This is a property and a developer we've been working with for quite some time, even before I joined the city. These were properties that were owned by the redevelopment agency outright, and he has a current contract to close on those properties once he closes the remaining, he assembles the remaining sites. He's currently in discussions with Waste Management to acquire the corner parcel. If that happens, then everything's clear, the properties are fully assembled, and he's ready to start the project, which facilitated this TIF application. This TIF application not only gets those housing units developed, they are for sale townhomes. That's what is proposed. But mainly the TIF support is for public improvements and river improvements. So this would facilitate the improvements along the riverfront on the site, as well as connecting a river path behind that property, all the way connecting behind the ballpark to the Queensley Bridge. So that would get us a river path both north and south of the river connecting to this development. And so these are truly public improvements, and that's what those TIF funds are being requested to go towards. With that, the applicant is online. It's here, and can give us a presentation, and I will ask if Conrad is on there. Conrad, are you there?
I am here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, I really appreciate the time this morning to be able to discuss the project, and again, appreciate our opportunity to serve the city in this capacity. So as Brian indicated, this is a project that we've been working on for several years now. It's one that has had very difficult and complex acquisition criteria related to 5 total parcels that entail 3 different owners that we're working with currently. And I'm pleased to say that we've made great progress, and we're all targeting within the project with our current ownership of 2 of the parcels and our contracts with the balance of the parcels to have those closed by year end. As Brian did mention, we do have some final things that we're working through with waste management, but that organization is been supportive here of recent this past year in being able to sell this small piece of property off Sutro. So Brian, if you could just click through the slides, and we'll just kind of work through them real quickly. Appreciate that. Again, the next one. Okay, so as Brian indicated, this is within redevelopment area 2. The focus here is to create a community, a housing community. The unique opportunity is with this site, it is 8.5 acres total assemblage, okay, which enables a lower density type of housing program that supports these for sale townhomes. So we are reclaiming land for the opportunity for creating a community that's walking close to the downtown. Next slide. The existing condition that you can see is one, we talk about RDA and blight. This one truly has kind of several issues with it as it relates to obviously the underlying land uses. There hasn't been a lot of development on the site. It's been degraded for some time, and we have a homeless situation where it's just it's a daily situation between the city, ourselves, and the other landowners there to get rid of. So, and then the edging is very complex as it relates to, adjacency to the UPR railroad right away owned by the city, Tumwa waste management, access with NV Energy, and the ACES ball field, and most notably the river. And again, accolades to Brian and his team for bringing forward this river plan. This is a vital part of to expand the access along the river and create the linkages between this site and the downtown, which will be open for the public use. Next slide. Again, some other existing conditions, as you can see off Sutro, that was kind of mentioned, in some of the other RDA areas as part of RDA number 2. This site obviously would be a catalyst to be able to bring forward these right-of-way locations, help to enhance the security and also the aesthetics of this overall area. Next slide. Just as in overall context, you can see the site is located with linkages not only to the downtown, the river, but again, within the downtown core, but serving, population of users and also employees of the area. And the opportunity here is to create, housing that enables more of a sustainably priced home that is within the downtown core area. which is non-existent today. This is a kind of a pictorial of the overall assemblage. So you see the different pieces that are being brought together, the spirit ownership that's been unified and brought in line with an overall redevelopment plan, comprehensive redevelopment plan for the area, which Brian has been instrumental in assisting with us on. Next slide. This is the current concept plan, incorporates approximately 185 for sale townhomes in 2 different configurations, priced again, trying to get those in the high, right below 400,000 for our smallest plan. That's a one car garage, up to approximately 500,000, which is a 3-story plan along the river. Next slide. This is actually the redevelopment distribution or employment little concept plan. It's harder to read, but again, as Brian indicated, these all relate to right-of-way issues. So as an example, along the UPRR edge, the railroad leases the land from the city. The land of that railroad actually, the storm drain flows onto the property. There's a large ditch that collects it, but basically constrains the development of our site. So, as well as the migration of homeless that comes across those railroad tracks. There we are. Appreciate that. The area I'm talking about is in the blue. So, as an example, there's retaining wall, there's grading, there's storm drain, V-ditch, fencing, and all that stuff that is non-existent today that allows the UPRR edge to function in a manner that curtails the existing homeless, but also the drainage issues that are on that property. The green edge, as Brian indicated, that edge ultimately is owned in fee, but anticipating at some point that's going to be transferred, that green area, to the city. But that area is a part of the TIF where funds will be made available to create a walking river's edge. Currently, that edge is degraded. There's homeless along that edge, crash, intrusion into the river, and so forth. That now will become an accessible element that complements the River's Edge Trail, which is on the southern side of the river. Be able to complete that loop. And, obviously we've had ongoing conversations with the Waste Management Edge along their side, which ultimately would tie the entire northerly edge of the river between Sutro down to the Coonsley, or at least down to the Wells Bridge as well. Then other improvements such as extension of cul-de-sac, those types of improvements are what enables the city to provide the access and the access rights that they provided to ACE's ballpark, NV Energy, as well as the several other public improvement easements that the city needs to retain for retaining wall, storm drain, and so forth. So again, each of these kind of enable the edges that adjoin public adjacency, either for beautification, access for pedestrian flow, safe pedestrian flow, access to river and trail linkages, as well as assisting in the overall homeless issue. Next slide. In summary, what we look at from public benefit, we can see that the expansion of the Truckee River's trail edge to downtown is a huge element. Solving the homeless intrusion of this area, which continues to degrade not only our properties, but all the properties in through this east side of the town, increase property tax revenues, improve required maintenance access, and other public serving agencies continue that, provide the required right-of-way for pedestrian access, safe pedestrian access that's non-existent today. Secure, again, as we described, the city's UPR lease area edge with the wall and drainage improvements. Obviously, creating attainably priced housing, which supports obviously the residents of downtown as well as workers, as well as employees, and just enables those who live in downtown, the ability to, continue to create rooftops that ultimately we can get a market, we can, drive more retail, we can start to continue to create a 24/7, downtown. And more importantly, it's just a catalyst for the larger areas investment and redevelopment. We are essentially one of the first ones in, and it's been very difficult, especially at times today to seek outside investment in areas wherein, when one looks at it today and goes, oh my gosh, there was a ton of blight. So we got to look at it and say, what can it be in the future? Clearly the vision of this is not what it is today, but what clearly can be in the future. We believe in it. I believe the city and again, accolades to Brian and his organization believe as well that together we can go ahead and create a outstanding class community that will ring true, the goals and objectives of the city, not only redevelopment plan, the river plan, but continue to drive the future of this downtown well into the future. So with that, open up to any questions. And again, we are so pleased and for the opportunity to serve the city.
Mr. Ship, anything else?
No, I am finished.
Questions from members?
Have you, Kurt Spitzer for the record, have you consulted with any contractors about construction pricing, vertical construction pricing on these units to substantiate
Yes.
sales prices?
So we've done that through, again, the implementation of this will all be local. On the home building side, specifics for not only the site work, but the actual homes themselves, yes. Notable of those would be a local home builder, Desert Wind Homes is a group we are closely working with. And they are doing a project just west of the downtown, right on the river, with their townhomes as well. We've also been working closely with some of the local contractors on the site work, estimating and so forth with the overall pricing.
Mike Van Houten for the record. I really like this project. I think I remember first reporting on it back in 2021. So I know it's kind of been a long journey for you. I like that the TIF financing is only going towards the public infrastructure and not the actual construction of the residences. And I think this area is like a textbook definition of blight. My one question would be on the timeline that you included, where you're thinking that you can start construction next year. Do you still feel that's pretty realistic?
Mike, I appreciate the question. We do, Mike. Time is right now, if everything goes well. I mean, the only thing that continues to drag this out is some of the things I can't directly control. And obviously in life, you can't control a lot of things, but our current discussions with waste management, Brian can maybe give a little bit more of that, but that continues to drag out longer than we anticipate. That clearly is the window of the site. There's the right of way along that side. So that's been a little bit slow to say the least. If we can get that back on track where I can get them, and I have actually a purchase and sale agreement, together with them. It's just basically getting the responses back. There's a few things that we've got to go ahead and work through, but we can get that back on track. I really believe we can get out there by the second quarter because of next year to break ground, which would be a great thing. the things beyond waste management start to become things that we more reasonably can control related to the city processing, just final city processing and kind of hope tying this all together in conjunction with the finance and the TIF finance. Brian's horizon is approximately 90 days, to where we can have our agreement cut together, our finance agreement kind of aligns with that, our closings at the end of the year. Assuming at waste management together, that I can kind of open up another line of processing for the working drawings and start to look at getting the preliminary stuff completed and move this forward. But so yes, Mike, right now, that's where we're headed. And fingers crossed with waste management.
Just to Paul on the record. So, yeah, that was gonna be my question. You have two utility partners around that site, both Tumwa and Waste Management. So both those stakeholders are at the table in these discussions.
Yes. So waste management has been involved in, it's been about a 2-year process. Wherein we kind of, and it's been one of going from more adversarial to complementary. There's a whole new regime change there that has given us and Brian a lot of at least encouragement working with them currently. I believe they really do want to work with us, the local people there. They do have some requirements as it relates to their national real estate group that they continue to work with. So I think we're within several weeks of kind of getting that together.
Michael Pani, a couple of questions. There's some buildings on the site now. Are those utilized or are those abandoned?
Those are being utilized. There's a working operation on what we call 1010 Commercial Road. That's along the river. That is being, it's an office building that's currently being used by that owner. There's a small manufacturing facility in the back that he's actually still manufacturing elements out of and being utilized. We do have an existing building on site that it is in place that we have boarded and also chain linked up. We would like to knock that down, but just from a standpoint of sequencing construction, that would all be timed with the comprehensive demolition of the entire site. We have asbestos reports and all the other things on it. But currently we've been able to kind of keep that one at bay related to, its boarding up and chain linking. As well, we manage the site through cooperate or basically assistance whom we compensate Karma Box, and they work very closely with Reno Safe and secure that department, to keep the homeless population at bay and under control as much as possible on that site.
You're able to terminate those uses? I mean, they're not going to impede your timeline on construction at all?
No, we do have a 120-day requirement in the purchase and sale agreement with 1010. So as an example, we get close to our timing for construction. And more than likely, we're going to close on the property by the end of this year. We will provide them the ability to continue to lease and use that property because they are an ongoing operation group that uses the facility, and then we just provide them 120 days to move off the site. But the intention is, by let's say Q2 of next year, we will have more likely have given them 120-day notice by at least the Q1 of next year, and then we will allow them. They'll get all their furniture, fixture, equipment out of those buildings, and then we'll be looking for demolition.
And Michael Pani, one more question. I saw that you've got mezzanine financing and a construction loan as part of your package. Have you secured those, or is that on hold pending any decision on the financing piece.
It's all kind of intertwined, so as example, we have sufficient equity into the program. And the financing will be local as well. That'll be in combination. Yeah, it's sort of like a loan slash. There will be some pref equity into that as well, but it's one that's is probably it's now I would anticipate is probably that program is financing, I'd say 50% of the home building in Reno currently. And that's through Alpen Mortgage. But it's all tied. Today's a big day. Our ability to go ahead and, call that contact to let him know that we have an approval here is the first step of this.
I've got Colin Robinson for the rest for Mr. Sick. Thank you very much for the presentation. I too am interested in this project for a variety of reasons. I've got a couple of questions, several questions actually, but just want to confirm that your arrangements are for that waste management parcel on the northeast corner of the site, not for the recycling center, correct?
That is correct. It's a smaller piece.
Yes, okay, thank you. My interest is then, I think, kind of linked up with connectivity in the river corridor. Can you talk a little bit about the connectivity to the Tahoe Pyramid Bikeway on the other side of the river, as well as kind of east-west connectivity through Commercial Road to the ballpark?
Yes. So as part of the overall river plan, I mean, the stretch of the trail connectivity currently extends from the Hoonsley Bridge all the way down to the Sutro Bridge on the south side of the river. On the north side, from the Coonsley Bridge to the Wells Bridge, there is actually about a 20-foot wide decomposed granite or a unpaved path that runs along the river. We had initial discussions with the city related to the ability or opportunity for that area to be a secondary access for the site, which would enable additional housing units because we're providing a secondary access primarily for fire. There was some flood constraints within that area where the improvements for that would be extensive as well as just very timely related to dealing with some different flood control agencies. So where we focused our efforts was again within the 50-foot setback area where we have a river's edge that we own to the river's edge. And again, this is a connection from the Wells Bridge essentially down to the southerly located waste management building. So the focus within the rivers plan is to create this loop, and there would be extended obviously further beyond the Sutro Bridge, but one could have a bike path access from the Coonsley Bridge down to the Sutro Bridge and loop back through the southern side back to the Coonsley Bridge and make that complete. So the area that we're focusing with our property is one where we would set the buildings back essentially 50 feet from the river's edge. And the river's edge has been defined through the hydrology and the high water line marks within the Truckee River. And that's been published by the flood district and so forth. And we've kind of worked through what that all is and what the constraints are there. Within that 50 feet, approximately 20 to 25 feet relative to where the retaining wall ultimately is going to go for our site is going to create a flatter bench area along the river. The idea there is that area would be improved wherein there's uneven or rocks, there's debris, there's old devices and stuff like that that all need to be removed and so forth. This is a part of the TIF funding to go through those areas, and what Brian has done with his team is created a imagery or a placemaking set of elements for not only this area, but really unifying the entire Reno downtown river linkage. So that includes, type of benching, lighting, landscaping, and so forth, and how that's all going to look and feel. So what we would be doing is providing that access area along the river wherein that area would become improved for providing that pedestrian access and link, again, essentially from the Sutro edge down to the Wells Bridge, and then we would tie into the existing trail linkage along that exists between the wells and the wells and I'm sorry, help me, Brian, the Aces Field or the other Coonsley Bridge. I'm sorry. But the most important things there that are required, is basically that is the haven for the homeless. So to me, without the appropriate fencing improvements that are non-existent up underneath the Wells Bridge and needing to be tied together with the ACES edge, and then along the UPRR edge, those are going to really be the elements that help to solve, where the homeless kind of come through that area along the northern side of the railroad track. But those are kind of the key elements for this RDA funding.
I just have two quick other items there. Is it accurate that that's parking underneath the Wells overpass?
That's correct. So that would be so that provides the cul-de-sac, but the primary elements there, we have to have
That's okay.
large truck turnaround. But we also need parking for the city. They also have right-of-ways through there to maintain. They have a drainage corridor, they have a sewer corridor that runs through there. They have just
Mr. Zick, we appreciate, we're just want to be responsible with our time here.
Sure.
So
I'm sorry.
Just shorten your answers just to get to the point.
Got it.
But we have all this information in the packet. You've done so fantastically. Provide that to us. So one more question.
Yes.
Member Adams' question?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if we're ready, I was gonna make a motion to approve.
Oh, okay.
That's Ted Radden for the record, sorry.
Nettie Ella, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the advancement of the e-commercial road tax incremental financing application to due diligence, financial gap analysis, and negotiations. Any other debate or comment before we vote?
Kurt Stitzer for the record. I just question the financial viability of the underwriting. Personally, I have some concerns about some of these numbers that are in here, but it's not my development project, so I just wanted to raise that, and I don't know how that might impact our vote to progress this to the next stage of evaluation, but market absorption and acceptance of this product type at this location and the financial viability of the underwriting is something that I personally question.
Any other comments? Okay. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Abstain. Abstention. Member Stitzer abstains. The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Sick, for your presentation.
Thank you so much all. I appreciate it.
Okay, very good. Let's move into item C2, presentation review of the financial gap analysis of the proposed deal terms for the Grand Sierra Resort expansion and arena project and recommendation to the redevelopment agency board for approval of deal terms and execution of final participation agreement.
Mr. Chair, before we
Yes,
start,
Mr. Chair.
I'd like to address a letter from GSR from April 17th requesting that I recuse on this matter. I did consult with the city attorney's office, and they advised me that I do not have a conflict of interest and I am free to participate and vote on this matter and other GSR matters. They noted also that this is merely an advisory board and emphasized that not a public officer, nor is this a public office. For the record, I would disclose again, my wife works for Caesars Entertainment. I'd add that some of the trusts I advise own some Caesars stock. I'll also disclose again that my sister is an employee of the University of Nevada. As to McDonald Toronto, I left that firm 3 years before they were hired by the coalition to represent it on a matter that did not exist at the time I worked there. But I will disclose for the record that yes, before this application was filed, I was a partner at McDonald Toronto. I don't believe any of these matters materially affect my independent judgment. I will be participating today.
Very good. Thank you for that. Any other disclosures or comments? Okay, staff.
Would you like to take a public comment before this item, Mr. Chair, or?
Let's just hear it first and then we'll go on to public comment.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Brian McCall. For the record, I'll just give a brief presentation prefacing this item and the discussion before this body today. So in October, I would say in August of last year, we relaunched, reactivated, re-energized, however you want to look at it, the redevelopment agency after about 15 years of dormancy, and launched the participation program, which was the guidelines for applicants to approach the redevelopment agency and seek support. And in October, the Grand Sierra Resort, Power Sports Development, which is associated with Morello Gaming, was the first applicant through that process for a catalyst project. That was put before, since we did not have a redevelopment agency advisory board back then, it was put before the redevelopment agency board. They advised staff to go and conduct a market analysis on the economic impacts of this entire proposed expansion project, phases 1 through 3, and the impact that would have on the community. In January, this board was selected, and shortly thereafter, the advisory board met. It was one of the first items that was heard. And this item, the market analysis, was presented to the RAB, and the RAB gave recommendation to proceed onto the gap analysis portion and start negotiations. The redevelopment agency board also approved that, and so our partner Hunden has done the work. Is here today to present that gap analysis and bring everybody up to speed on how negotiations have come along since then. But the next steps on this is to seek this body's recommendation on the proposed deal terms today. That will go to the redevelopment agency board to approve the actual terms of the deal. That is slated to go before the redevelopment agency board on May 7th. And leading it up to staff and council to finalize that owner participation agreement. So I'll notice there isn't a development agreement. This is an owner participation agreement. It's essentially a financial agreement. Next slide, please. So highlight what this deal is and what it is not, just to make it perfectly clear, but it is a performance-based financial agreement. It is primarily based around the reimbursement of property tax created by the project. And it is a tool to close the gap that has been identified by our partner Hunden Partners. That is, the cap currently sits at $145.8 million. Some key points to remember is that GSR will pay all their property tax as they would any other project. They will pay it, but we will reimburse them only a portion of their income generated through the end of the redevelopment area 2 life, which sunsets in 2035. This does not put any financial obligation onto the city or the RDA. The property tax has to be created. They pay their property tax. We would receive it and then reimburse them biannually. And if these terms do not extend past RDA two unless it's brought before, unless one RDA two gets extended into this agreement is renegotiated at a further day. But it is not a loan per se. It is a promissory note, and I will say that is a bit of a debt instrument, but in the public's eyes, we are not taking the public's dollars in giving a loan to this project. We are not taking out any bonds. We are not adding or creating any new assessments or new taxes, whether it be hotel tax or a sales tax or a special tax, room tax, etc. And there are no other revenue streams associated with either the city or the redevelopment agency related to supporting this project. It is primarily a property tax reimbursement. Can't state that any clearer. Next slide. Negotiations have settled on essentially three options, and I'll summarize these very quickly. The first option is because there are only 10 years left in redevelopment area 2, by the time this project gets completed and starts being assessed their property tax by the assessor and the county treasurer, there's only about 8 years. And so given that condensed timeline, option 1 is 100% reimbursement. With that 100% reimbursement, the fire station located on site would be deeded to the city. And the current lease, if you didn't know, the city is currently leasing Fire Station 21 land for the Reno Fire Department to operate on that site. And so that land would be deeded over to the city. That lease would terminate. Option 2 is a 90-10 split. The lease would continue and the city would retain the option to buy the property at a later date based after appraisals. And option 3 is same 90-10 split, but the remaining 10% that we were retained by the redevelopment agency would have to go to river improvements in that area and for the purchase of the fire station. And so those funds would be sort of earmarked specifically for that area. Some nuance, but within a sort of defined scope.
Under option 2, Kurt Stitzer, under option 2, what would the 90-10 split, the 10% from the RDA2, what would be the proposed use for that, or is that just baked and to be determined?
Yep, it would be banked for agency operations and future capital improvements.
Michael Pani, under option 3, what's the estimated value of the fire station land?
We do not have an estimated value at the moment.
Nadia Oliveria for the record, what's the lease amount that we are currently doing?
The lease amount is currently $2,200 a month under the current lease. That lease has it's at its expiration date. So we have to renegotiate a lease anyways. It will likely be at market rate lease going forward under this arrangement. I'll just save this slide for later, but that's just the recommended motion. We have GSR here today to present on this item, as well as our partner, Huntington Partners, to discuss the gap analysis. And so I will invite Grand Sierra Resort up here to present their portion.
For our partners at the University of Northwest. Absolutely.
Oh, pull that down. Stop here.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Stephanie Brown, the athletic director of the University of Nevada. Just a couple of comments. I was here last time, as you guys know, so I'm not going to be repetitive, but just to refresh everybody of the impact that this will have on the University of Nevada. So our athletics programs, as you know, we're about the compensated community resources. This state-of-the-art caliber of arena will have a significant impact on the trajectory of our athletics program, just by the revenue that we will be able to generate. And then the more successful an athletics program is, the more successful the university is, the more it impacts on development, to growth, to community. So with that, just want to say again how much we are looking forward to this and supportive of it, and how much we recommend this.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. My name is Fred Steinman. I'm the director of the University Center for Economic Development at the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno. I just wanted to kind of provide this advisory board with a little background regarding the creation and history of Reno Redevelopment Project Area Number 2. In 2005 and 6, when redevelopment project area number 2 was created and subsequently amended, had the what is at least officially referred to as the Reno Hilton sub area of RDA 2. That was kind of the culmination of the process where at the time I served as staff with the Reno Redevelopment Agency. After about a year and a half of exhaustive efforts, meetings that included the county, the school district, Reno Historical Society, major property owners throughout RDA 2, including Atlantis, Peppermill, then Reno Hilton, now GSR, Boomtown, at the direction of then mayor of the city of Reno and chair of the Reno Redevelopment Agency Board, Bob Michelle, and each member of the city council and agency board, which included then council member and agency board member Jessica Speraza, staff prepared to report to city council on the subsequent amendments that included each of the individual sub areas. At the request of Atlantis and Peppermill, we included the South Virginia and Grove Street sub areas. At the request of Reno Hilton, the Reno Hilton sub area was added, and then the Boomtown sub area was added at the request of Boomtown. Primarily to replicate the efforts that had been completed in RDA number 1, the downtown project area. Specifically for the 4 major gaming properties within the downtown core. Since 1983, the Reno Redevelopment Agency had invested millions of dollars in projects like the National Automobile Museum, the Downtown Event Center, the Reno Ballroom, retrack, and the covering of parts of the corridor, specifically to reverse the declines in tourism, hospitality, and gaming revenue that had been occurring within the downtown core since the spread and opening of the lead game in California and throughout the Pacific Northwest. Again, at the direction of council and the agency board at the time, the redevelopment plan, the subsequent amendment plan in 05 and 06, and the accompanying owner participation rules that I submitted as part of my comment today were approved unanimously by the board and the council. Where the council and the redevelopment board made the determination and findings of blight as outlined and defined in NRS Chapter 279, Section 388. The owner participation rules also grant any property owner within RDA 2, from small to large and all points in between, the ability to utilize tax increment financing as the primary financing tool for redevelopment project area number 2. Again, these findings included in the redevelopment plan from 05 and then the subsequent amendment in 6 were approved by not only the agency board and the city council at the time when I served as staff, but also by the then Reno Redevelopment Citizens Advisory Board, which included representatives from then NewCo, which was a corporation founded by the 4 downtown properties to support redevelopment and revitalization within the urban core. Again, just to conclude, it's important to keep in mind that redevelopment and tax increment financing is a tool, very much like any other economic development tool employed. And since 1957, when the legislature approved NRS Chapter 279, cities and counties across the state of Nevada have used it to successfully revitalize their urban cores as well as kind of surrounding areas. Water Street in Henderson, Idaho Street in Elko, Victoria Ave in the Audi District in Sparks are just a few examples of how redevelopment and especially tax increment financing has been used to successfully revitalize and rejuvenate declining parts of communities throughout the state. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Nielsen.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the advisory board. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you again. This is our second time appearing in front of you. I'm going to thank our partners from the University Athletic Director Rent for being here at both meetings and for Dr. Simon to give a little bit of history of the RDA. Brian, we can just kind of shuffle through these slides and look at more of a conversation with everybody. These are I wanted to give you some updated renderings. The architects have been hard at work. We have some updated things
Start
that
here.
really highlight the difference, between Lawler Event Center and what we're gonna be constructing. Number one, this will be the largest construction project in the history of the city of Reno, with all the elements for our redevelopment project combined. That's the arena, that's the garage, that's the improvements along the lake, that's the workforce housing that we're gonna be building. That's all the infrastructure that goes into it. It is gonna be the largest project in the history of this city. For the arena alone, you heard last time that we appeared in front of you, one of the GCs who was bidding on this job estimated that there's gonna be over 600 construction jobs created, that those are prevailing wage jobs, that is local union labor from right here in Reno. You are gonna have construction workers driving down 395 and pointing out the window of their car to their kids saying, I helped build that. And that's gonna be a sense of pride for this community. This is what one of the premium suites is gonna look like. The suites and the club seating is really what's gonna enhance the revenues for the University of Nevada basketball program. So you can visualize, we don't have a single suite at Ballard. So there's going to be spaces within the arena itself for, you know, larger groups, for the club spaces, for the starting five club that the university has, things like that. Again, here's another smaller version of the suite. We're gonna the Wolfpack will be playing in the top facility in the conference. That is going to give us a competitive advantage when it comes to recruiting players, to getting players to stay here, and just the overall experience that the players have when they are putting on that Wolfpack blue for their careers at the university. And then the ice rink is going to be year round. We're going to be sponsoring youth hockey leagues. We have been talking with Reno Ice, and they see us as a supplement to what they are doing. They are very supportive of us building this. We don't currently have enough ice capacity in Northern Nevada to accommodate all the need that there is. So just want to make it clear that this is part of the project and this will be operating year round. So with that, I wanted to address some of the things that have come up today and have been in the news. And, you know, this has been a long process. We began this process a year ago, and we waited for the city to stand up their new process about how redevelopment projects are going to come and apply for financing to make these projects pencil out. And we submitted our application back in September. Mr. McCardle gave you the timeline. We appeared in front of the redevelopment board in October. The board said, we want to go out and hire a neutral third party to do the financial analysis on this project. Those findings were brought in front of you with the first advisory board meeting that you had. Subsequent to that, they have completed the gap analysis and the but-for analysis, and they will be presenting that today, which justifies the ask of this project. But let's talk about what has changed since we filed this application. There was an election, and that has significantly altered the global economic environment that we are all operating in. Our costs have gone up. Our original costs were around about 20% lower than what's in front of you today. And that is a direct result of what we are seeing from the tariffs. There are tariffs on everything from structural steel to all the other materials that go into this project. And you might be thinking, okay, well, why don't you just buy domestic steel? What is happening in the real world is domestic steel manufacturers and construction manufacturers that create all the things that we're going to need to go into this project. They see that foreign steel is going to be 25% more expensive. So they are raising their prices by at least 20% to match. That is the reality that we see. And with all this uncertainty, we were lucky because we've done a lot of our work on the front end of this project, and we've got certain things in place, but this has become significantly riskier for us to take on and to build. And at some point, there will be a breaking point for this project. If costs continue to escalate and there is not a slowdown in prices that we're seeing, we will hit a point where this is not going to be feasible for us. But right now, at this point in time, it is, but the TIF is an essential component for making this project pencil for us. So let's go back And let's talk about some of the things that were brought up, with the three options that you are considering today. Number one, the value of the fire station, that's about $4 million. Currently, we do that lease rate to the city of Reno that is well below market rate. We used to do $1 a year to the city during the recession and for several years after that when the city was really struggling with its finances. And so that is a tangible benefit to the city. If you can get that lease off the books, the city is already dealing with a $20+ million budget shortfall that they are trying to address. And if you take the land off the books with option one, that gives them a lot of breathing room with their budget right here and now. Moving forward, obviously, the economic benefits are going to be laid out. But you've all seen in your packet, we're talking about, approximately $300 million over the next 30 years in just the property tax that is going to be generated. And I think you all know the waterfall effect of property taxes locally. 38 cents goes to the Washington County School District, 31 cents goes to Washington County, 26 cents goes to the city of Reno. You got about a nickel that goes to the state of Nevada. That is significant new revenue for all of these local government agencies. And by not moving forward with this project, we're going to be depriving the school district and the county and the city and the state of much needed revenue that they're going to be able to rely on moving forward. In addition to just the property tax fees, the findings state that, $225 million in new payroll taxes, sales taxes, live entertainment taxes. The construction taxes alone on all materials are about $14 million. That's an immediate injection into state and local funds right now, just from the project. And then you add on top of that, the payroll taxes from those 600+ prevailing wage union jobs. That is a immediate impact that starts occurring now before the arena even opens. And so when you look at the estimate on, if we were to receive 100% of the TIF, it's about $68 million. Well, all of these tax benefits more than exceed what we would be getting in order to help finance this project. And as Mr. McCardle said, there are no upfront payments. There are no loans. We are not asking for bonding. We bear 100% of the risk. There is zero risk to the city of Reno. So let's talk about some of the public benefits. We've talked about the jobs. We've talked about the tax benefits. But how about workforce housing? The Reno City Council has made housing a priority in this community. There is not enough of it, and what little there is not affordable. And nobody asked us to do this. This has been part of our plan since the beginning. We want to build a workforce housing component. We can put 300 units on the RV lot on the back of the GSR land, and we will be subsidizing the cost of that for our team members. It's no secret that we have high turnover in the gaming industry, and if we can use housing as a positive component to retain our team members, that is something that our ownership has wanted to do from day one. There's going to be river beautification. There has to be some flood control improvements along there. There's a serious homeless population that resides along the river behind the GSR. That is not our land. That is it's a combination of City of Reno and Truckee River Flood Management Authority land. And so our hands are kind of tied when it comes to dealing with the homeless, but if improvements are put along there, you're not going to have that. And we all know that homelessness, that contributes to a condition of life. And then the fire station land. We just talked about the significance of that. That land has serious value. Station 21 is the second busiest station within the city of Reno. Station 1 downtown is the busiest, but because of the proximity to the freeway, Station 21 is able to be second on scene to most calls that come in. So these are real and these are tangible and these are significant community benefits that are part of this deal. I will leave it at that. I believe we have a representative from Hunden who's going to go over the results of their analysis, but if any of you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
So you're from Hunden, and then we'll have to questions. And before, if we do get a motion, there will be opportunity for everybody to public comment and provide testimony for against the project before we go. So let's hear from Hunden if they have representatives online. Can I take that, please? Yeah, come on up. There's no dinner, so I can send you can't. Hey. All right, that's one.
Thank you very much. My name is Mike Thiessen. I'm a project executive with Honda. Also on my team is Lexi Cup, who's a director, and Will, who's our analyst and our quantitative genius. So you are in good hands with our firm. By way of background, we have done an assessment on over 200 billion public-private partnerships throughout the country. They span from downtown redevelopment projects to NFL stadiums to new placemaking and master planning that's going on as a new way to both have urban and suburban projects move forward, or it's typically called the hero and the halo effect. So there's usually one project that's the anchor, and then the spinoff is obviously the halo about that, and you'll see that a little bit within this project, where the arena is the hero and is the generator that was spin off other development, another tax generation, the halo surrounding it. So obviously, part of the analysis we did as it related to Reno was both locally to the city of Reno, but also to the region. And you'll see that in some of our presentations, you want to make sure that we understand that. We don't have a dog in this fight. We don't care if the project moves forward, if it doesn't move forward. We want to try to use the analysis that we can make your decisions on, and every elected council can make their decisions on. The second thing that I would probably say on that front, which is anytime that there's a disagreement on economics, that's good. That means that the project is at the forefront of everybody's discussion. So I would say that the people that tend to always disagree would be weather people, economists, and my family when we try to choose to go to them. And at no point is there ever a consensus on these. So I think the fact that this is a high profile project is good. It shows growth in the Reno as a whole and in Boulders, Nevada. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the details. We've introduced a little bit about funding and what we were tasked to do. The but-for test, which we were asked to do from the Reno, which would be, would this project move forward, but for some level of incentive? Two things fundamentally that you have to understand with that would be, if a project of an arena anywhere in Reno had moved forward without public incentive, it would have already happened. The market would have said, we can afford to build an arena. We can afford to build a new convention center. We can afford to build a football stadium. That hasn't happened. That is the market telling you that it's not but for something this way. The but-for test from an economic perspective or from an incentive perspective is not can it be funded, but can it be financed? And is there a shortfall? And if there's a shortfall, how can the incentive help gap that shortfall? We've done the but-for test, which we believe but-for financing opportunity would not be built, and identify the potential shortfall. The gap does not cover the total shortfall. That's not the analysis. The analysis says, is there a shortfall, and what's available within the tools that are available within the city of Reno to use to help bridge that shortfall. So it's not we're $10 short and we found $10. It's we're $10 short. What rules do we have to help bridge that $10 gap? That's what we're going to talk about.
Can I ask you a question on this slide? Sure. So you've got in there that the Morella Group may have the financial capacity to fund the project. And you look at their capacity, it seems to me that's an objective question. Either they do or they don't.
Well, I think anytime you would say, you know,
they may not want to, but do they?
Well, I think if you stand the project alone, what the problem is, there an opportunity to fund something that would make more money that the Morella Group would do?
That's not my question. You've got here that they may have the financial capacity. I'm just trying to ascertain, in your opinion, do they have it?
We have not looked at their financials, but the public financials would say they clearly have the ability to fund it into town.
And then you also say that they're unlikely to move forward. Do we know, is it an absolute definitive, maybe that's a definitive no that if they don't get the tip financing, it doesn't go forward?
Yeah, I can answer that question. That's
okay.
Yeah. It does not.
It does not go forward without this.
It was assigned.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm hearing feedback online that it's a little hard to hear everyone in the room, so whenever anyone speaks, if we could just knock it up a volume or two higher than what feels comfortable, I think it will help with the recording. Yes, theater voices, project outward, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Dis had mentioned the change in the, economic realities since, November. I think we've all realized that. It has nothing to do with this project, but within our life. And I noticed that my 401k was down obviously 1,000 points already today, which means I've got to work a little bit longer. But originally, the conversation that we had in October and the early estimates on the project were providing were 633 million. Since the election and since the discussions related to tariffs, they have now gone up to $786 million. You can see where they came through and what it affected on each project. That created an additional $153 million in cost for this project. So that's not a debatable issue. That's just the world that we live in today. Whether it's a suite chair, steel, ice rink equipment, everything is more expensive today, particularly in the construction.
Good question. Hey, Ron, for the record, and I'm not at all challenging your number here, but could you just share with us the basis?
Sure, this was the basis.
If we're talking about $153 million, right, it's great to know what the sources of that,
Yeah.
that data are.
So the source of this data was the development estimates that were provided by the Morello Group, and the ones that they had gotten from their construction manager. So we have not gotten into and looked. There's a bidding process that I'm sure that has to go through. But initial numbers, this is not dissimilar to what we've seen in other projects that we work on across the country.
Okay, so so you're seeing this is a general condition that you're seeing across multiple projects.
Absolutely.
Since the election.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So as we talked about, this is the new tax revenue generated by phase one. We wanted to make sure that we were very clear about the demarcation of the end of RDA 2, which you can see right there. And everything moving forward is a potential projection. It makes no assumption that RDA 2 would be extended. It simply makes a projection of what the new increment would be generated from this project post the end of RDA 2. That makes sense. Those are illustrative purposes only, not for negotiation purposes, illustrative information. Those are obviously summarized in the small box graphic to the left. This we think is a key slide, and then I'm going to have Will address a little bit of it in terms of how we get what we think the property tax assessment would be. As you can see, the RDA ends in 2035. The current amount of property taxes is generated within RDA 2 or within the baseline is the light gray underneath what we call the camel hump that says 68.1 million. You can then see where RDA 2 ends in 2035. And then everything into the light lime green is what the property tax collection would be moving forward post the sunset of RDA 2. Well, if you could talk a little bit about the meetings and the conversations we've had with the assessor to develop this number, would be really super helpful.
Yeah, of course. So we had several calls with the county assessors. And of course, our first question is, how do you go about kind of finding the assessed value of a project that's unique like this? And of course, the majority of what they use is those Marshall and Swift calculations. So we started, that was one of the ways we looked at how to find that increment. We also looked at the construction costs given to us, and we kind of found an average of the three to get what that true assessed value is. With that number, we multiplied it by the total tax rate, and that's how we kind of found that total incremental property tax throughout the life of the project.
So one of the key things that we think it take away from here is whether the project or doesn't happen, nothing in the up above $68.1 million exists without it. So you would continue to track along in the gray area. So no projects, no $68.1 million in that. It's, really can't be more simple than that. So if the project doesn't move forward, that $68.1 million doesn't get reassessed at a higher level at the current GSO property or anywhere else within the RDA. And then obviously the sunset, I think Mr. just talked about the different splits that would exist within the property tax, and obviously the 26% that would accrue back to the city of Reno is represented as part of that greater, like I said, line green. So, any questions on this before we move on to this?
And this net area for the record, so just to clarify, the lime green portion of the 68 million would be going back to the GSR.
So we get to that in just a few more slides.
And, previously, when we heard this before, there was discussion about a continuation of RDA two for 20 years past the sunset. In which case, at that point, the discussion was, and I understand this is moved because that hasn't happened, but there was discussion that a continuation of the 26% that would be going back to the city of Reno would in fact go back to GSR. And then the rest of that amount of increment would go on to county, school, what have you.
Yeah, I think there's been discussion to that point, but I think that what we were tasked to do is because there has not been an extension, is to not try to look forward and try to guess. Which is why we wanted to make sure that it was very clear the demarcation of 2035 when RDA two sunsets.
Well, then my follow-up question to that is, if there's the assumption that GSR cannot do this project without the known between now and 235 tax increment, is it also that the GSR cannot do this project without the extending portion?
We've made no opinion related to the extension because again, that wasn't what we were tasked to do. Related to whether GSR will move forward without the 64 I think Mr. Just answered that. We wanted to give you the numbers that we bantered about and we talked about in terms of how we could quantify them.
Yeah.
And then what a potential business transaction or split might look like for both parties, meaning the RDA and GSR. So whether they move forward without the participation agreement, that's a GSR question. So I'll leave that to that following, because I think we're gonna have a spirited conversation with that.
Kurt Stitzer for the record, pursuant to page 128 of the meeting packet, it does specify that terms will not carry over if RDA two is extended. Whether it's renegotiated at that time or not, but as it currently stands, that's not contemplated.
Okay, perfect. Just a quick summary. We wanted to make sure we brought this back up as related to how other public arenas and venues have been funded in Greater Nevada over the years. And in some cases, we wanted to point out if there was bonds or there was additional new taxes or some things like this. We have not addressed Allegiant Field. We have not addressed a new base stadium. It's great. It's probably not relevant to both this market or the size of this building. So that would be like me trying to compare the Bears to Philadelphia because it just doesn't make any sense right now. We're just not there. We're just not there.
Michael Pondy, last time you were here, we talked about this and I asked you to see if there was any privately owned arenas that are publicly financed. Were you able to find these?
So the privately owned arenas that we found are all connected to casinos as a whole. So if we looked at MGM, if we looked at the arena that's part of Mandalay, if you want to consider those privately owned, those would be considered privately owned.
Were any of those publicly financed?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
So these are the project assumptions. I'm going to let Will address these as these are the key inputs to the model, the economic model, as we'll move forward with the economics and the tax generation and earnings generation.
Right. So just like Mike was saying, these are kind of the three big revenue streams for this project: the arena, the aqua golf, and then this GSR incremental revenue. And we kept going back and forth debating on if we should include what the incremental revenue to GSR should be. And we think that really just helps show the full picture, because having these more people on site, they're going to have more incremental room nights, more food and beverage revenue, and of course, more gaming revenue. So going back to that first kind of assumption of the arena, with talking to Feld and other promoters, we estimate at stabilization around 95 events. And another question we did ask these promoters when we met with them is, how many of these events would be net new to Reno versus how much would be displaced? And through talking to them, we learned, because Reno doesn't have this state-of-the-art facility, they are missing out on some events that are not currently happening in Reno. Of course, not all 95 events will be net new, and that's something we took into account in our model. But again, it's something, we did a lot of research on to see what's new and versus what's being displaced. And then in terms of aqua golf, we really looked at the Top Golf in Sacramento. They see around 800,000 visits a year. So we are a lot more conservative, and we were thinking around 350,000 estimated annual attendees. And then lastly, of course, the incremental revenue that I talked about before.
I think that the conversation, that we had internally related to the incremental revenue to GSR was spirited, because in some ways that's a private business. But we didn't think that it would be intellectually honest if we didn't address it within the report, knowing the proximity of this project to the GSR, the competitive nature of gaming as a whole. And then knowing that would those events have spillover effect, we believe that they will. I also think that it's very safe to say that the Reno Event Center, while a great building, is dated and probably could use a little bit of love. This is an opportunity to where live entertainment, whether it's sports, family shows, athletics, demand such a higher level of interaction with the customer facing fan than they have in the past. And we're not talking about just having free Wi-Fi. We're talking about food and beverage. We're talking about ease of parking. We're talking about wider seats and deeper treads so that you're not knocking into when you go forward, which will allow people to come through. To talk about displacement, you are now at the crossroads to be between two very fast growing areas between the Bay Area and Sacramento along the interstate, and then moving forward to Salt Lake City. Right now, there are shows that are not stopping in Reno because you don't have facility. Not that they can't hold them in, but they can't be profitable. The profitability boils down to not only ticket prices, but also sponsorship, food and beverage, and merchandise. So if you don't have the infrastructure within a building like that, you're not going to get the shows. It doesn't matter how great of a place this is, you're not going to get the shows because the risk is on the promoter. The promoter's going to be where he has the most risk, and if he feels he can make more money doing 2 shows in Salt Lake City and 1 show in Sacramento, and bypassing because he knows people will travel, that's it.
Michael, I question for you.
Sure.
Does market size have an impact on the ability to draw shows?
Market size does, but what it really has an ability to draw shows is New York will draw multi-talented shows or multi-shows. Reno has enough population between Reno, Tahoe, and the apps that they can draw their own. If you were building a 30,000 seat arena, it would be different.
Would you equate Reno's market to Salt Lake and Sacramento?
No, but you are what they call a pass-through market. So if you can pick up an extra show, or you're moving from the Bay Area through Sacramento, in Reno, into Salt Lake, that's an extra show that you can book. It's got extra money for both the promoter, the artist, and the builder. So you are a secondary or / tertiary market, but you're also on major interstates, which allow promoters to route through this market. And with a proper venue, those things then can't stop you.
Mike Van Houten, for the record, while you're on the topic of displacement, I do have a lot of concerns about the Reno Event Center because it is a publicly owned venue that is not even paid off yet, and it's pretty much barely functioning as it is. I think they have maybe 6 events a year, or 6 events this year, which is a good year for them. I think last year they had 3 events. How many events do you foresee being displaced from that facility if this arena was built? Because you're essentially pitting a public-owned facility against a private facility that public money is going to be going towards to assist. Isn't it kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit there?
Well, do you want to talk about the conversations with promoters related to displacement versus what would be truly new shows into this marketplace versus anything that would potentially transfer from the event center to a new building?
Yes. Oh,
sorry, no.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Well,
Addressing me.
do you want to talk about the conversation with Feldon, Live Nation, and OVG about concerts and so on and so forth?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second. Yeah, we can go through kind of the different events we saw when talking to Feld, of course, really looking more on family shows. And that's where we see this ice component of the arena being a big factor. So what we heard from them is around 5 to 6, if I'm not mistaken, of new shows that are not currently happening in Reno. Also, other promoters are talking about the bigger capacity. So having that 10,000 seats, a majority of the events that we have scheduled in here, outside, of course, of the potential minor league hockey team and the UNR basketball games, are major concerts. And Lexi, I didn't know if you also wanted to add a few points to that as well.
Yeah, I think when considering obviously what the local market can support now, the main draw for these new shows that aren't currently there is that there's just not a facility of that caliber that can accommodate that or be a big enough draw for some of these touring acts to stop over and find it beneficial. So I think to your point and concern of the current Reno Event Center is that there still are going to be shows that fit within that capacity that are what would be considered a little bit lower rated business or lower rated acts that would still need a home and still need to have that utilization and that use within Reno Event Center. There's very little overlap. We did account for, again, some displacement just to make sure that we weren't overcounting or overestimating what would be net new. But the types of acts and shows, and to your point, what we looked at in terms of what was reported on Polestar for the existing Reno Event Center isn't necessarily the same type of caliber of acts that would then be at this new arena.
Hey, Rap, a couple of quick questions on that. One of them, an extension of that. I'd love to hear something. I'm sure you looked at the seasonality of what would be concert use, given some of the existing venues that already exist around summer. I'm assuming that there was some understanding of enhancement around shoulder season use. But would love to hear any math you got on that. Also, and I'll just go ahead and throw the second question at you. Not to jump too far ahead, but obviously there's been there have been competing proposals on the map of this project that have been submitted publicly in recent days. I would love to hear, maybe I am asking you to defend your work. I would love to hear your perspective on your work and perhaps response, if you're willing to give it, on anything else that's been submitted in the last week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some economic projections coming up in the next 5 years. That's probably the appropriate time to address those. And yeah, we're 1,000% confident in our findings. And we will justify when those comes up. Not that we need to justify them, but we will address them when they come up, sure. So the conversation related to was there a funding gap? Is there a financing gap? These are the projected revenues associated with each of the 3 areas that we talked about on the previous slide. Obviously, we do not the alcohol and then incremental GSR revenue, which we talked about was food and beverage, rooms, and gaming. You run that out over a 30-year period. The roughly internal rate of return is about 3%. Each of us at this table can get a higher rate of return on our high-yield savings account like that. So when the question came up is, do they have the financial wherewithal to undertake a project like this? Yes. Would it make smart financial decision at 3%? Probably not. So that to understand what would make sense, if we look at a 10-year treasury, which give or take the last 2 weeks, and then anywhere from 4.2 to 4.6, depending on whether anybody gets on Twitter or the market's unnerved or whatever. But we looked at that treasury to be a risk-free, meaning that the U.S. government has always managed to back the bonds and it's always issued. We pegged that at 4.5. The difference between the internal rate of return of 3% and if you were to do a risk-free 10-year treasury, we picked 10 years because it closely mirrors the end of RDA 2 versus a 30-year that you could go buy out. That's why we stuck with 4.5 for the people that want to do the math on that. Created a financing gap of 145.3 billion. So that's the gap that would be if the Morella Group invested at 4.5% for 10 years versus if they took the 3% on the arena for that same period of time. The gap is $145.8 billion. So that is even with, as we talked about, the banter back and forth related to, do we take into account the private business incremental revenue? that would come from increased hotel tax, increased hotel room occupancy, increased gaming floor activity, and increased food and beverage. So that number obviously is bigger if you take those into account, but it's probably not intellectually honest to address them to a public body by not taking them into account. So with those implications, we feel that it passes the but-for test. I want to address your point before related to a discussion related to cap rates and the other gentleman who I'm sure is an esteemed colleague in the economics industry had talked about that the cap rate should be 1.5% over a prime. We don't know how to get there. We can't intellectually get there. As I think we led with the comments that if this was a risk-free investment, you'd have 5 arenas in Reno. You'd have 8 arenas in San Francisco. You'd have an arena in your backyard. You could have host MMA fights there and sell beer to your neighbors. So it's not truthful to say that this is a risk-free investment and that the premium is only 150 or 1.5 basis points over that. Typically, cap rates are developed either by comp sales or income, and in that study, he didn't address either because we have not seen any comp sales on our list that we can find, and we're in the marketplace every day. We did address it from a cash flow perspective, which was hence the first slide that you saw, and where we thought there was an identifiable gap of the $155 million. So with that, we believe that it does, without a doubt, pass the but-for test, even taking into account the revenue generated for a private equity.
So Taylor, added for the record, the reason I asked that question is because I've been trying to think about what is a road forward for this body, because we're not the redevelopment authority agency. I mean, we're an advisory body, but obviously the city council is the redevelopment authority board. And I'm trying to sort of think of something that we can do this within our charge, but also speaks to a couple of concerns I have. What I don't want is I don't want to see this conversation become a ping pong ball that's going back and forth between the redevelopment authority board and this body. And that's my concern. I'll be honest with you, telegraphing. My concern is we look forward on the 3 options. I think staff did a great job of laying out 3 options, but it's important to know we didn't negotiate. And they're not really ours to negotiate. We don't know what works for the developer, what doesn't work for the developer. We also don't know what works for the city council and what doesn't work for the city council. And it concerns me for us to make a judgment that they might reject and say, well, no, we don't like that, but we kind of like this. Why don't we send this back to the redevelopment? Why don't we send it back to the RAB and have them look? And we're hearing about about 2 things. We're hearing from the developer on the challenge that time is adding to cost. But I mean, if you live in northern Nevada right now, you're also hearing about the angst that this ongoing conversation is causing in the community. And I think it's to everybody's benefit to see it resolved one way or the other. Whether that's and so I mean, I think where staff gave us 3 great options, city council or the redevelopment authority board, I'm trying to keep my comments specific because if I'm understanding it right, the next action is about the redevelopment authority board, not the city council. They just happen to be the same group. That said, though, they may choose not to move forward with any of these options. They may choose to create new options, and I think for me, and this is, I guess, my question for staff. Going back to our last meeting, staff, you utilized the city's procurement process to make the best value decision on Hunden as the group to conduct this analysis, correct?
Actually, Attorney Assistant City Manager for the record, yes.
And you brought that to us. We accepted that recommendation, sent it to the redevelopment authority board, who then accepted it and commissioned this research, correct?
That is correct.
And so it's really the city council, it's really the redevelopment authority's board's research that we're hearing here today.
Yes.
And so for me, I know Hunden's reputation for their work in other communities. I mean, and I know we've got more to talk about. I apologize. I had to move a number of things just to be here today, but wanted to be sure that I was able to participate. But the key for me though is I've seen enough to say we've got Huntington's map. They have done what they were commissioned to do, and I'm happy, you know, whatever the redevelopment authority board chooses at this point, whether it's one of these three solutions or something else, is something I'm willing to support. I mean, obviously, we're an advisory body to them. I looked to the extent that I could. I read the work that was submitted. I've been through this as best I could in the time we had, and given what we asked them to do, I think they did it. And so but I recognize city council may consider other things. For me though, I'll support whatever this body does, but my personal view is I'm comfortable sending this back to city council saying that we are comfortable with whatever decision you feel is appropriate based on the options that are in front of you, or whatever else you may come up with. We just think but I mean, I think staff did a great job of teeing up 3 roads forward. That's what the redevelopment authority board wants to do.
Let's keep going. You have to step out. If I call in,
I'll try to call it.
John Hill commercial. Okay. And then, but I want to make sure we hear public comment before we. For sure.
Yeah, I knew there wouldn't be a decision made on that. I just wanted to be something on the record before I go back to my day job.
So as we had mentioned before, and I'm going to let Will and Lexi talk through these next couple of slides. We looked at this multidimensionally. So we looked at it as the impact on the city of Reno itself, and then the greater region, which is where was mentioned earlier, some of the property and sales and other taxes come through. So I will let them draft that through. But before we go, I just wanted to make sure that we highlight in the lower right-hand corner the property taxes alone, just on the for the first 8 years, are $68.1 million. The taxes that would be generated for Reno alone would be 72.2. So
is that in the first 10 years? Like upon years,
that's the full economic impact all the way out to 2055.
So when you're comparing the 68,
yeah, and there's a full-on comparison about this one.
I mean, I just want to make sure I'm matching your numbers.
Yeah, and when you see that, we've broken it down on what would the investment be.
Does the 68 million correspond to the 8.9 or the 74?
The 8.9 original.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Will and Lex, do you guys want to address the city of Reno piece and then the regional piece on the highlights?
Yes, so yeah, I can start out with that. If we want to go back to the slide beforehand. So again, we broke it into 2 components, looking at what was net new in terms of spending and earnings and jobs supported to the city of Reno itself, and then to the region, which is the city and the county. So the big numbers, of course, is kind of what is that net new local tax revenue. The first column or second one is from 2028 to 2035. So the life of RDA2 is 8.9 million. And what that 8.9 million is the C tax, hotel tax. And for this scenario, we did 10% split. So it would be 10% of the incremental property tax. And we'll go further into that on these next upcoming slides. But that's why that first, 8 or 7 years is so small, is due to netting out GSR's potential portion. Then when you see the 2028 through 2045 jumping up to 40 million, because the city is able to capture that full property tax. Of the total net new local tax revenue, nearly 80% of it or 90% is property tax revenue. The C tax and hotel tax, since C tax is very complicated on how it goes to the state and then dispersed back on population growth rates. It's just a small increase. So again, majority of that is property tax.
Yeah, and I would just add to this, obviously, looking at those net new spendings and net new earnings, the baseline for the argument stays the same, regardless that obviously the numbers we look at here is that there will be a significant amount of new spending due to this project. And what we typically say is, but for this project, what spending would the city of Reno directly miss out on? And that's what this slide is really emphasizing. There's a significant amount of that net new spending as well as net new earnings and supporting those average yearly full-time or equivalent jobs throughout the lifespan of not only the project in phase 1 and all of its elements, but then also looking out into the future. And we project it out here again through 2055, just to get an understanding of what this could look like over a 30 or so year time frame.
And I guess the one other thing, where we are showing 1,700 full-time equivalent jobs associated with that construction period. That is half of those would be the 660 that Mr. Dis talked about, which would be construction on the project site itself. That would include suppliers, vendors, and anything else that would feed into a project of this size. So there's no conflict between. So you may take 660 and net that off. That might be what 1,110 jobs that would be there to support the construction of that project. Actually on-site jobs.
Yeah, and one more thing that it's consistent with this slide, so we can stay there, but is the net new spending for us. It includes not only what's happening on site for the project and what would be happening at GSR, but also what would be happening throughout, in this case, the city of Reno. So when we look at that direct spending, so visitors then deciding to go somewhere downtown for dinner, that's inclusive, but also indirect spending. So because of this project, you then have kind of that, again, water flow of spending that happens throughout the economy, because there's that significant increased visitation and spending that's supporting, in this case, the city of Reno. And then on this next slide will be the region as well as the city. So the county and the city making up the region. It's a little bit smaller, and we can jump to that next slide now. It's a little bit smaller, and I think Will can do a great job, obviously, explaining of it. But when we consider what is net new, obviously the larger geographical area you're considering, the smaller the net new will be, because there's going to be more people making up the visitor demographic. But Will, anything you want to highlight here?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if we want to wait a little bit for this, but kind of the discrepancies between our numbers and what we see in that recent report that just came out by Mr. Wells, Professor Wells. And the big couple things to know. The first one is he's showing the present value of that total spending. So, and we are showing the nominal or real value of it. So we don't take into account time value of money, which is something you normally see when you look at budgets for municipalities. The second is what we counted as net new versus not net new. For one thing, for example, is in their report, it says that all of UNR basketball games, I believe so, is none of that is net new, which at first glance kind of makes sense. But when you think about it, a portion of those visitors coming to this new arena would be counted as net new, because if this new arena is built, state of the facility, let's say you're a recent graduate of UNR, you're going to come back to check out the new and state-of-the-art arena. So you can't, it's not really fair to say that it cancels out evenly. And that's just one of the multiple examples to point out and where we kind of see this discrepancy in our numbers.
The other item that I think we wanted to mention is there's a conversation, and while it might not be Tesla or SpaceX or Intel or Google or anybody else, there is a corporate relocation that's going to take place in the terms of hockey. A hockey team has employees that are not just the players. They are ticket salespeople and general managers and trainers and everything else that revolves around that hockey team. They are picking up and potentially moving that hockey team and that associated staff here. So there are net new additions that are coming into Reno simply because of one of the tenants related to it. So as I said, we're not building a new production plant. It's not a new steel facility. We're not building a new plant there. But there is a relocation, albeit small, to the area. But it is positive to both Reno and the county. They buy homes, they spend, they pay taxes, they entertain, they do things of that nature. So from a simplistic sense, to say that there's not an economic impact or outreach it's not being honest related to what a building like this can do to a marketplace. So we wanted to make sure that it was perfectly clear whether, and we stuck on the 90-10 split on how the flow of funds would work, because we were told back after the first study was done that there was hard stop on any discussion related to bonds, loans, advancement of money, And it was like hard stop, mic drop, whatever profanity you would like to use. Don't consider it, don't think about it, don't even factor it in. So the structure of the deal as it is contemplated now, we've talked about the property tax, which you saw with the lime green and the hump of the 68.1 million, which is the assessment that we talked about with the assessor. That is paid into the City of Reno Redevelopment Agency. The contemplation of the 90-10 split is then taken into account with $6.8 million going to the City of Reno Redevelopment Agency. We have not taken part in the conversation related to Riverwalk, whatever, but we want to show the example of how the money would be split. That would leave the remaining $61.3 million that would then be remunerated or remanded back to the Grand Sierra Resort. The arena doesn't get built, nothing moves past the red Grand Sierra Resort. Arena gets half built and it generates $32 million. All these numbers flow through and change. There's no advancement, there's no debt. The promissory note is probably more, and I would defer to legal, which would be, this is the gist of the deal. You pay us, we give it back. It's not we're giving it back to you in advance of us. So as I said, that was very clear to us on more than one meeting, both with elected officials, board members, and staff. So we tried to break this down so that we understood what the true flow of funds are. Those numbers may change if the assessments change by the assessor, but as a whole, the arena doesn't get built, there's no money. The arena is half the assessment, there's half the payback. The arena is 1/3, there's 1/3 the payback. But at no point is the City of Reno, as of the understanding today, advancing, fronting, bonding, or obligating any money that GSR does not give them in this process first.
Michael, Brian, I don't know if it's for you or for staff. Question on, when I think of a promissory note, I think of an actual dollar amount. The note that you're talking about here, is it fixed amount or is it just tied to the incremental tax, whatever it may be? If it's 100 million, they get 100 million. If it's 10, they get 10. Or is it actually a fixed dollar amount? Yeah.
So Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager, for the record, our proposal bringing forward is capped at the amount of tip run that's anticipated based off of Hunden's assessment for the RDA. So we have it proposed at that 68.1 as the top end. That would be a deal point for negotiation as it relates back to the applicant, but that is our intention at this time.
The lesser of actual or 68.
Correct.
Thanks.
Any questions on this? Because this is kind of the gist of what the negotiations today that kind of look.
Colin Robertson for the record. So if we see $68 million is forecast 2028 to 2035. That is all we like performance based on the TIP agreement. And that's before the RDA 2 sunsets.
That's right. So can we go back to the camel hump slide?
Sure.
Well, the RDA sunset is obviously the dotted line at 2035. So that is based on our conversations with the construction costs that we estimated from the conversation with the assessor and what that would be assessed at. We believe that number should be about 68.1 through 2035. Then once the RDA sunsets, all of the pink is then left to come back to all the various taxing bodies because the RDA is not existing.
Unless council.
Unless, actually, Attorney, as the city manager, unless the legislature approves an extension that has to happen by state law, that's something that is not being considered at this time. There's no bill and there's no direction from council.
So to your point, I just want to make sure, once the RDA ceases to exist and sunsets, that then the city of Rio shares only 0.6%. The other taxing bodies would then participate. Yeah.
Michael Pine, can I ask a follow-up question? Did you calculate the internal rate of return on just $68 million coming into them, as opposed to that financial gap of 145?
No, we did not. No, we did not. We can do that if that would be helpful. I would assume on a $700 million project, considering it's probably less than 10%, gonna be a small.
Like less than a 4.5.
It's gonna still be less than the 4.5.
Okay, thanks.
Will, do you think you want to try to do that on the fly?
Yes, I can do that real quick.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just mentioned for the record, I do believe that we may have some quorum issues starting around the 1 p.m. hour. So if we can continue on the presentation, I think that would be
Perfect.
helpful.
Okay, so we wanted to again break that down to the regional versus the city of Reno. We had talked about the direct money that would come back to Reno being the 17.2 billion. That's the various taxes that you can see asterisk there versus the 63.2 that would be remunerated back to the GSR. You're still looking at 121% return by giving the GSR back their money or back their property taxes that they paid. And then those are the highlights before the net new spending, how they equate back to the number. You can see the total new taxes at the 74.2 to the far right. And then we also did the same analysis related to the region. The region's obviously not at the table, but we wanted to show that obviously the city of Reno does not exist within a vacuum. But within the region, another spin off the generation would be $225 million on the 61.3, which would be a 367% return. Then with that, we would be happy to take any questions. Just a quick check. Forum. Vice Chair Robertson has to leave around 1. Is anybody else?
I've got a 1:30 in my office, so don't want to hear about 1:10, 1:15.
Okay. Anybody else? I think our form is 5, simple majority.
Correct.
Okay, so let's, you want any questions now, or can we listen to some of the testimony for and against? What's the point of the board? Any immediate questions based on the comment? Yes. Okay, let's hear public comment or testimony for or against the project. Anybody online, please raise your hand and indicate if you'd like to comment on this project. Okay, let's start with our online folks. Mr. Wells, you're up first. You can unmute your mic and you have 3 minutes to comment.
Try this again. Should be good. Oh,
All right, now I'm unmuted.
there you go.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll let Will do the calculation on what the, again, I just am perplexed about one part of it. Again, if it, when you were originally presented with this, you were told it didn't pencil out unless it got the TIF, and the TIF doesn't make up the gap. So why is it still going to go forward? That's part I find is ambiguous. About the, or just, it's something you should probably push more to find we get a better sense about that. But just and the broader thing about the economic gains is that, yeah, I find the economic gains are significantly less than what was presented. Again, that's for a different kind of tax revenue than your property tax revenue. But it's not just me, but there's been many studies by many economists who consistently find, at least in terms of the sports aspect of it, that that it's not an economic development generator at all. And again, a lot of studies I cited in my report, the Huntington partners don't explain how they get their numbers, so I can't critique or talk about it. But I do provide a lot of details about it, and I consult with economists as I work on it, including folks who have written extensively on the area. So that part I just want to reiterate that the economic returns that are put forward in terms of like the 2.76 billion and so forth like that are much higher than what you're actually going to experience. But again, within the overall return rate, I'll let you guys continue to debate that. But again, I'll be online, so if anybody has questions, if my answer would be helpful, I'll be glad to do that for you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Squabbs, comment now.
I would, thank you. And I'll be brief. With 3 minutes, there's so much I'd like to actually respond to, but for the sake of time and my limit. For the record, Stephen Squaga with the Peppermill Casino. I do think it's worthwhile all of your time, if you want to go to Mr. Professor Wells' report and look at the displacement piece, because it is more, it's a little more nuanced than just saying, oh, there's 5 concerts that are now gonna, and this facility isn't able to handle it. It runs a lot deeper. Public facilities, obviously our industry, game day, Wolfpack games, right? Whether it's pub and sub, Archie's, the Wall, 17 games a year, when that's gone, that surrounding neighborhood, see what the displacement effect has. The one thing I do want to touch, and I didn't feel appropriate to interject on the front end, but basically you as a board are being given 3 options right now. You can do 100% TIF, you can do 90% TIF plus plus, or 90% TIF plus plus. Last meeting, it was in your note in the minutes for the February 21st meeting. One of the cautionary, I think the board got very hesitant, even with the Hunden discussion, because they were saying this does not commit us to the use of TIF, correct? It's in the record. Ms. Attorney assures everybody the council has not said they want to dedicate TIF to the project. Mr. Adams follows up again. We are not recommending to the city council the use of TIF as part of this motion, correct? My point being, this has become a divisive issue amongst the community. To be given 2 options or 3 options of using TIF at 9% or using TIF at 100%, I think is a disservice to all of you. I think it's a disservice to the city council. I think there could be options. There might be options 0 TIF. There might be options saying, this is capitalism, build it, reap the benefit. If you have a partnership with the university, outstanding. We all support you. We hate being on this opposing side. But to take public dollars, I looked at the TIF requests prior to this. That is a home run. That is a housing project in a blighted area. It checks boxes. But I think this, I mean, when you're given 3 options and they all include TIF at almost the highest level, I think there's a moment of pause here to say, hang on. I don't even think that as a group, you're being pigeonholed into this city. So I'll leave it at that and appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online? Yeah, I'll give it back to staff and London to just close out the presentation on the commentary.
I can address the first point if you want, and then you can close that.
Okay, sure.
Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager. To the last comments from public commenter, just to clarify, at the last redevelopment agency advisory board, at that time, there were no deal points and no direction in front of this body. Your recommendation was to move forward to the RDA agency to determine if they wanted to accept the market analysis done by Hunden, and then propose that we move forward with gap analysis. The direction that came from the RDA back to staff from that decision was to move forward with Hunden completing the gap analysis, and direction to staff to pursue deal terms that would be brought back forward. So the direction in front of you today was the direction from the RDA to you. So just clarification, I do think that that's nuanced. At the February meeting, there were no deal points because there was nothing to discuss. That went to RDA. They said, go get deal points. That's coming back before this body, which is part of what you're charged for.
Well, Mike, I need one more clarification. We didn't make a recommendation in February. It was a non-action item.
Correct. It was a non-action item. At that point, it was just analysis of Hunden's original market study. So thank you. Turn it back over to you, Mike.
No, I think all of the comments in Mr. Wells's comment are appropriate. Many times the risk reward profile has to be taken into account. And I think as we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, the risk reward here is that there's a potential project in front of this body. The math has been generated for you, and then ultimately the council will make the decision. Does it solve the gap? It does not solve the gap. That's a risk reward decision then that the developer and the city have to make. I think that's why they call it risk. That's why they call it reward. So to say that because it doesn't solve the whole gap means that you shouldn't move forward to it, or we don't understand why something would go forward. We've all taken leaps of faith in our life. And religion alone is a leap of faith. So we all do that every day and we assess our risk reward. So that's really no different than anybody else doing that. do that at this point. So I don't think Mr. Wells's comments are inappropriate. We probably differ on inputs. We probably differ on what we think is the multiplier, which is why we have academia and why we have practitioners, and we're very comfortable with our economic model. We're very comfortable with our inputs, and we're very comfortable with the primary research that we've done related to the promoters, talking to the assessor, assessing what other secondary units have done in markets where they have been built, and as it relates to the profile that data we would then generate. To say that the UNR basketball team would have displacement, I think that's probably correct. I think what you're losing, and I say this out of great pride, and it also kind of hurts me to say this, is I do know that when I go home, and I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and we have the first and second round of the NCAA tournament, or we go when we watch the regional tournament in Spokane for the women's NCAA tournament, it changes the dynamic of the town. You do not have a facility that can host that right now. And I'm not saying that you will get it, but you definitely won't get it if you don't have a facility that can host it. So that's, again, a risk reward is, are there investments or are there incentive plans that the town wants to make to try to be attractive to new concert promoters, new family shows, new hockey teams, the community ice rink, and then potential secondary events that currently don't exist. So the displacement argument is valid, but then is there an additive argument as well? And we have not factored into any potential additive events that the town would potentially go on bid on. So displacement is correct, additive is also correct. Either of them have probably been taken together. So.
Questions? Colin Robertson for the record. I guess I just want to say something because I have a hard stop for a day job responsibilities. One of which is that I am reluctant to. I think that this advisory board is sort of. I feel like we're a little bit in between the bark and the sap on some of this because it's going to go back to council and it's all the RDA to make the decision. But I guess I will say on the record that I'm a little bit skeptical of some of these numbers, like 213,000 some odd memberships for the Aqua Golf complex, for example. Like the largest membership organizations in the community are 25,000 pass holders. So I'm a little skeptical of how those numbers relate to the overall projections. Personally, I am also reluctant on the RDA sunset schedule that in the period of time before the sunset of RDA 2, the project as proposed would produce projection of the $8.9 million in tax. But then RDA 2 sunsets, and so the idea would be that we're committing to future property tax increment after RDA 2 sunsets for the life of the project, 2028 to 2025, and RDA 2 will have expired suddenly into the matrix. So, from my point of view, we would be, I think, better off altogether if we had some more, if we did some more homework before any kinds of decisions were made to effectively look at some of these questions. I don't know that there is a rush for this decision to be made by the agency itself. If there is, I'm not aware of them, but I guess I feel like there's some more information.
Mike Van Houten for the record. I still feel like the displacement factor for downtown and probably the surrounding university is being understated on how it would be affected by having this arena built. And I feel like since this isn't going to come before the RAB board again, most likely, there was a missed opportunity to talk about more community benefit agreements, such as a certain number of events at this arena could be reserved for the city to use. Or a certain number of tickets per event would be set aside for nonprofits or, under-resourced schools. And I don't think there was any discussion about that at all. And, now that the RDA is going to be extended, they're not going to get that benefit to build the workforce housing either. So there is also no real guarantee that the workforce housing would be built, since it's not going to be part of this agreement anymore. And so for those reasons, I'm really skeptical of it.
One question for the applicant, Mr. Dis. Michael Pine for the record. Sorry, I always forget to do that. Same question for you that I ask of every applicant. Excuse me. What source of funding do you have for the construction costs? And if it's financing or cash, if it's financing, have you secured that financing, or is it contingent on what happens with the TIF financing?
There's financing in place that is contingent on the TIF. It will materially change the terms of that financing agreement.
The third party loan? Correct. Thank you.
Comments? Just checking on you, board member Kara Harris, any questions?
Thank you. No, there's no more questions. Mr. Pawnee asked the one question I had with regards to financing.
Actually, I got one follow-up question. You said it will materially change the terms. Will the financing still be available?
It might not be.
Might not. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are no other comments or questions, we're tasked with moving forward either through action or not. The recommended motion would be to move forward a plan on one of the three options presented, 1, 2, 3, all or none. So I'm seeking what's the opinion of the board?
Well, I'll start with my thoughts and then kind of follow up on yours and Mr. Robinson's. I do kind of feel like we're missing information. I didn't get any input, or I didn't feel like I had enough input on the Weld report. The comparing of the two reports, and because I did think there was some information there that was valuable, but I would have liked to have seen some analysis on that. I know Mr. Adams last time asked for an analysis on the but-for test and the legal analysis, and we didn't see that. The displacement issue is a significant concern of mine. The event center was funded. It's a redevelopment project. There's redevelopment bonds supporting it. It's, I don't know, $3 million a year is the debt service on that. And what's the impact going to be? You don't want to see a redevelopment project create deterioration or blight at another redevelopment project. I do kind of feel hamstrung with the three options we've been given. It's not our job or role to negotiate. But it's our job to advise council and give them what our best thoughts are. I would certainly like to see more in terms of the terms of those options if council's going to move forward. You can't get a PUD through the city without donating and constructing a fire station, and it doesn't even use public financing. So to me, why wouldn't that just be donated outright? To talk about the capping of the tip is important. What assurances are there, to your point, that UNR is actually going to be able to use this facility for all the years that it's there? Just a number of things that, in terms of negotiating the deal points, not our job to do that at the dais. I wouldn't even want to try to do that here, but I don't know that those options that are presented really kind of cover the gamut. That being said, I'll say that I cannot recommend that the city approve moving forward with this, simply because I don't think it qualifies as a redevelopment project. I have nothing against the project. I'm a huge supporter of public-private partnerships. But redevelopment financing is qualified. It's very limited, and I just don't feel that this falls within the buckets of what's available for redevelopment financing. Like I said, the city can use whatever other general fund dollars it wants if it believes that's the priority it wants to make, but our job here is limited. And we have to act within chapter 279, and I just don't see how it falls within that. I don't think it meets the statutory intent under 279. You know, the purpose of 279 is to promote sound redevelopment of blighted areas which constitute social or economic liabilities by remedying injurious conditions. That to me does not describe the GSR. It doesn't describe the parking lot, doesn't describe the valley area. These are utilized daily. It's an integral part of their current operations. I just don't feel like it satisfies that element under the statutes. I don't think it meets RDA 2's goal, which is to arrest and prevent further decline from deterioration and disuse, to overcome hurdles faced by owners in addressing blight, facilitate the alleviation of blight, to support the rehabilitation and reuse of properties so they can contribute their proportionate share of taxes and services. Again, I just don't think that falls within what the GSR does. You know, under the statutes, it specifically says that redevelopment areas, excuse me, can include properties that are not blighted. And that's exactly what I think has gone on here. And that's exactly what the Grants Area District says, that this area is not subject to blight and is not in need of redevelopment. I have a lot of concerns and questions about the but-for test. I'm still not sure I understand what the but-for test is. And Mr. Hunden says you've got to meet this internal rate of return of 4.5%, yet the $68 million won't even come close to that 4.5%. So what is the benchmark? Under the statute is there any other reasonable means of financing the proposed project? It sounds to me like there is. It's just a decision of whether or not the applicant wants to go forward privately funded or not. I just don't feel comfortable that I have enough information here on the but-for test to say whether or not this really qualifies. And with respect to Mr. Hunden, I don't think the numbers they threw out there help answer that question for me. I've got some concern that this has never been done anywhere else. This is, you know, unprecedented action to use public financing for a private arena. And I think that's an important factor the council needs to consider. They may decide they're happy leading the charge on that. But I do think that's something important that they understand. And that comes to the other comment we had earlier, that as we sit here today, we haven't had any council direction on, do they even want to use TIP funding for this type of project? So it's kind of hard for me to give a recommendation to them when the only policy direction I have from them is the redevelopment plan, which to me says we should be looking at something like we did in the item before this one. So, like I said, I've got those concerns. I think it's a great project. I've got nothing against it. I think it'd be a fantastic asset for the GSR. It'd be a huge asset for the community and the university. We just gotta look in a narrow lane, and I just don't feel like it fits in that bucket.
If I can, Ashley Attorney, Assistant City Manager, for the record, to your point, Mr. Pawnee, you'd mentioned board member Taylor Adams had previously requested a legal analysis on the eligibility. We do have Rory Robinson, who's been retained as outside legal counsel for the RDA on this item specifically. She did issue a letter that was sent to this body and the RDA determining that this property is eligible. However, she's available online if you would like her to weigh in more on the but-for analysis, or if you would like her to address any of your questions. That's up to you and the chair, but thought I would offer that she is available online.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful.
Rory, if you would like, I believe we can unmute, and anything you'd like to weigh in.
Sure. From a legality standpoint, chapter 279 does expressly contemplate and authorize inclusion of land in a redevelopment area, that the land itself doesn't need to be redeveloped, may not be suffering from blight itself, but the inclusion is appropriate for the redevelopment of the greater redevelopment area. And that determination would be done at the time that the plan was implemented. After that point, there's discretion as to whether a project benefits the entire redevelopment area it doesn't, the area that the project is located on does not expressly need to be blighted. And so it can be just underutilization, you know, converting a parking lot into something that actually is beneficial to the greater area. So that's as far as the statute goes, the project eligibility, you know, the board is still has the discretion to decide under all of those factors, whether or not you believe it is beneficial to the greater redevelopment area and is justified. The but-for analysis does not have explanation under statute or to, as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen any cases in Nevada really explaining what the but-for analysis is. How it is customarily used is, you know, as the various studies have shown, what, you know, what is your internal rate of return? What would be a reasonable expectation? So you don't have to show that the developer doesn't have the means to develop the project. And in fact, that wouldn't be a reasonable requirement because the funds aren't guaranteed. It's strictly based upon the tax increment, and it's a reimbursement. So it is appropriate to say, you know, would somebody who had other choices for use of their money put it into this project without some reasonable assurances that on the back end they're going to get this additional income. And then, just also on the, there is a Nevada case specifically talking about, you know, using area that is not in itself blighted for a project that benefits a greater area. So again, both of those things are permissible under the statute. There's still discretion within the board whether or not you feel you've received evidence supporting a determination based on your own judgment. And what's unusual in Nevada law, there's specifically a provision saying that if you determine in the but-for analysis that those funds wouldn't be put in but for the agency's support, that is final and conclusive. So clearly the legislature anticipated that there are a lot of different ways to look at it, and so they are giving you some discretion there. So it would be a question of if you believe you've seen substantial evidence that the project wouldn't be developed but for these funds.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Is there any appetite for a motion? Are we motioning to motion all three? Say motion one. What is the motion? You read. Yeah, so there's three options preferred, and the staff recommendation for motions to insert preferred deal. If there isn't a preferred deal, the motion could be advancing all three options for the council's discretion or something. Combination of the three or.
Well, and Nettie Oliverio for the record, Mike, I have to say, I love this project. I think this would be transformative for our area. I do not think it qualifies for TIF under what I understand the qualifications for TIF to be. And on that basis, and I would love to see actually the city council think about other ways in which City of Reno could help move this project forward, but not with TIF. And so on that basis, I can't make a motion for any of the three given to us options on this, because none of them fit what I think is appropriate.
Michael, planning question for staff. If this board doesn't make a motion, I assume it still goes forward to the agency
That is correct. This
Review,
item.
there would just be no.
There would just be no recommendation from this board. So this is currently scheduled to be heard at the May 7th Redevelopment Agency Board. That's the direction we have at this point.
Well, in the effort of just bringing action, I'll make, we'll see where it goes, but I'll make a motion to recommend to the redevelopment agency board approval of a deal of the council's discretion and authorize staff to finalize and execute an owner participation agreement consistent with the selected terms. But to clarify, I'm not saying specific option, but giving them the discretion to discuss and saying that the motion is essentially to ask them, saying that we're okay with them moving forward in whichever way they.
Paul, for clarification, this is Kara Harris for the record. Does this include an option that isn't on the table yet?
Yes.
Could that include an option that is not on the table yet? Because I would be comfortable maybe looking at other options, and I just want to make sure that is a piece of this, that if things were reconfigured, we could see some other things to move forward. So does that include that? Paul, is that you said yes?
I'm saying the redevelopment agency board may consider other options. But what we're saying is my motion would be that we recommend the project moving up to them for consideration in a recommended action. As opposed to no action, no motion. Something on that or? Awesome. Yeah, you can second that. Okay, any other discussion on that? A bit of a rambling motion. The intent is clear. All those in favor on that? Aye. Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Garrett, did you vote?
I'm an aye to move forward with the consideration that other things are on the table outside of the options we've seen today.
Okay, so I believe that is 5 aye and 2 no. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Let's close that item out and move on to item B, boards, commission, committee member reports and announcements. Anything for the staff? Board? Okay, let's move through to item E, future agenda items. Any discussion on items in the future agenda? Nothing there. Item F, public comment. Any public comment online or in the room? General public comment, not specific to an agenda item. Okay, seeing none, I motion to adjourn today's meeting. Second from Member Pawnee. All those in favor say aye.
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 Say nay. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Paul. Good work.
Yeah.
Stop the recording.